The world is definitely changing. And, the old rules, they're being rewritten right now. But there's this one crucial alliance, the U.S.-UK relationship, that's pushing forward, really looking to shape global trade and tech for years to come.
Absolutely. And this week is quite significant. President Trump's state visit to the UK is happening September 16th to 18th.
Right. And this isn't just shaking hands and photo ops, is it? There's real substance here.
That's the key. There's a huge multi-billion-dollar technology partnership right at the center of it all. We're talking big focus areas: AI, semiconductors, telecoms, even quantum computing.
Wow, critical stuff. And what else? I heard something about nuclear energy.
Yes, exactly. A landmark deal called the Atlantic Partnership for Advanced Nuclear Energy. The idea is to really speed things up, cut the red tape for building new nuclear plants in both countries.
Speed things up how much?
Well, the aim is to get the licensing time down from maybe 3 or 4 years to potentially just 2.
That's a big difference. And this all connects back to an earlier deal, right? The GTEPD.
It does. These new deals build on the U.S.-UK Economic Prosperity Deal, the GTEPD, announced back on May 8th, Victory Day's 80th anniversary. It was called a major victory at the time.
Has it been? What have we seen so far from that deal?
Well, it's been mixed, frankly. We saw reduced U.S. tariffs for UK cars and aerospace, which was welcome. But there were downsides, too. A big UK bioethanol plant had to close because of the new terms.
Okay, so wins and losses. What's the big picture goal behind all of this activity?
It seems pretty clear. Tighter economic ties, stronger national security for both, and setting a kind of global standard, especially, with China being such a major competitor.
Got it. So for this deep dive, we really need to unpack this special relationship in this new era, an era shaped by America first and this intense global competition.
Exactly. We need to look at the economic shifts, the tech cooperation, the strategic alignment needed to navigate, this much more complex, multipolar world.
So where do we start? Understanding the America First idea seems crucial.
It really is. From the U.S. administration's perspective, America First isn't just a slogan. They see it as vital for rebuilding U.S. manufacturing and critically strengthening national security.
And President Trump made that pretty clear, didn't he, in his inauguration speech?
He did. He pledged to bring back a golden age of U.S. manufacturing. It's a core promise.
And Vice President Vance laid out the plan.
At the American Dynamism Summit back in March, he talked about the strategy: cutting taxes, slashing regulations, boosting energy production, all aimed at making the U.S. a manufacturing powerhouse again.
And the U.S. Trade Representative, Jamieson Greer, connected this directly to innovation and security, too, I believe.
He did, back in July. He argued a strong manufacturing base isn't just about jobs, it's about socioeconomic success, national security, and driving innovation. It's all interconnected in their view.
Okay, so that explains the focus. How did tariffs fit into this America First picture? They've certainly been used a lot.
They have. And they're seen not just as economic tools, but as necessary correctives. That's the phrase from Stephen Marin, the chief economic advisor. Correctives to a, quote, broader strategic imbalance.
An imbalance meaning allies weren't pulling their weight.
That's the argument, that allies perhaps relied too much on U.S. leadership, maybe took it for granted. Even the German chancellor, Merz, acknowledged some past free riding, as he put it.
And the trade deficit numbers are pretty stark, aren't they?
They really are. The U.S. goods trade deficit hit over $1.2 trillion in 2024, part of a total deficit over $900 billion. The administration points to figures like that as proof of, unfair trade practices hurting the U.S.
So what were the big tariff moves?
Well, there was Section 232, that's a national security law, used to put 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum in March 2025.
Right, and that got doubled for most countries later.
It did, up to 50% in June. But significantly, the UK stayed at 25%. Then there were tariffs on cars, trucks, auto parts, another 25% in April 2025.
And wasn't there a broader tariff, too, using a different law?
Yes, using IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That was used to apply a baseline 10% tariff on almost all imports from nearly everywhere, also in April.
Framed as reciprocal, right?
Exactly, to counter foreign trade barriers. But the overall message is clear. The U.S. expects its partners, including the UK, to adapt. Business as usual is over. You have to align with this America First approach now.
Okay, so that's the framework. How is the UK actually navigating this? Let's get into the Economic Prosperity Deal, the GTEPD, signed May 8th, 2025. What did it actually do?
Right. The aim was to make trade fairer, easier, and more substantial. But the details show the compromises involved Take the automotive sector.
What happened there?
The U.S. did cut those Section 232 tariffs on UK cars down from 25% to 10%, which, sounded good.
Wow.
Jaguar Land Rover called it the very best deal hoped for under the circumstances.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
There is. A big one. A quota of 100,000 vehicles per year. So analysis showed that while it saved maybe $1.2 billion in duties, UK car exports still face over £500 million in extra duties compared to before the tariffs started. And that quota just caps growth.
So damage limitation, really not free trade.
That's a good way to put it. It's about managing the new reality, accepting limits.
What about aerospace? Was that different?
A bit better there, actually. Tariffs on UK aerospace goods engines, parts went from 10% down to 0. That took effect June 30th.
And why is that significant?
Because it shows that baseline 10% reciprocal tariff can be removed. If, the foreign policy and security conditions line up in Washington's view, it sets a precedent.
Okay. Now, agriculture. This sounds like where things got really complicated. Beef first.
Right. For beef, the UK dropped its 20% tariff on U.S. beef, and it created a new 13,000-ton tariff-free quota just for hormone-free U.S. beef. In return, the U.S. gave a similar 13,000-ton duty-free quota just for the UK's hormone-free beef.
So potentially good for UK beef export.
Potentially, yes. Could triple exports, some estimates say.
But then there's bioethanol. That didn't go so well, did it?
No, that part caused a huge stir. The UK cut its tariff on U.S. bioethanol from 19% basically down to 0 for a large volume, 1.4 billion liters.
And the impact.
The National Farmers Union called it unbalanced, and it led directly to the Vivergo plant closing in August. The CEO described it as a full-blown crisis.
How big was that plant?
It was major, bought about 1 million tons of wheat each year from thousands of UK farms. So you see a direct hit to a specific sector and its supply chain, all part of this bigger trade adjustment.
A really stark example. What's the latest on steel and aluminum? Still negotiating.
Still ongoing for a quota to reduce those tariffs. Remember, the UK is still facing 25%, even while others went up to 50%.
And 25% is still too high?
Producers say yes. George Drakos at Bridgenorth Aluminium said flat out, it's not something that can work long term. And there are tricky conditions for any potential quota deal, like the steel having to be melted and poured in the UK. That means the raw steel making has to happen there. That's tough for companies like Pata Steel who are shifting production methods. It shows how deep these national security definitions of supply chains can go.
So this GTEPD deal really highlights the give and take. But stepping back, what are the wider worries for the UK?
Well, there's a fundamental point made in a Parliament report from September. It basically said UK exporters are now trading on worse terms than before President Trump came to office because the tariffs came first, then the deal to slightly reduce some of them, the starting line shifted.
Right, so even a win might just be getting back some lost ground.
Exactly. Plus, there's a lack of transparency. The UK government hasn't published an economic impact assessment. That makes it hard for businesses to plan.
And how does the UK deal compare to, say, the EU's deal with the US?
In some areas, less favorably. The EU seems to have secured a single capped tariff rate of 15% for most things. But for the UK, tariffs on products like chocolate or cheese can actually stack up to be higher than 15%.
Any other sticking points?
Parliamentary scrutiny is one. The GTEPD isn't a formal treaty, it's more of a political framework. And then there's the ongoing pressure from the U.S. about the UK's digital services tax, the DST.
The tax on big tech companies.
That's the one. Mostly hits U.S. firms. President Trump apparently sees getting rid of that as a very big deal. It shows the U.S. focus isn't just on goods, it's very much on digital trade, too.
Okay, so this economic picture is complex, but it's deeply tied into the tech race, isn't it? That brings us to this new multi-billion-dollar tech partnership.
Absolutely. This is the next big piece, expected to be signed during the visit. It's about really deepening cooperation in key areas.
Like AI. The UK's strong there, right?
Very strong. Third largest AI sector globally, valued around $92 billion last year. So AI is central. Also, quantum computing, hugely important for things like encryption.
And semiconductors, obviously.
Yeah.
Addressing those supply chain issues.
Definitely. Collaborative R&D, making supply chains more resilient, plus telecommunications 5G, looking beyond 5G.
Anything else in the tech mix?
Well, UK groups are really pushing for blockchain and digital assets to be included. They're talking about a transatlantic corridor for payments in stablecoins, fostering tokenization.
Stablecoins being cryptos pegged to regular currency.
Right. And this push connects with President Trump's own apparent interest in blockchain and crypto. And we can't forget rare earth minerals. A partnership covering those is seen as vital in the global competition.
So what's the driving force behind this huge tech push? It seems very strategic.
It's explicitly strategic. Peter Mandelson, the UK ambassador in Washington, framed it as crucial for Western leadership over China in the race for technological supremacy. He called it a competition that will shape this century.
So it's really about geopolitics as much as technology.
Absolutely. It's about securing supply chains, controlling critical minerals, and basically forming a united front against competitors like China. Technology is clearly seen as the key battleground now.
And alongside the digital tech, there's this big move in civil nuclear energy, the Atlantic Partnership.
Yes, cutting that red tape, speeding up licensing, aiming for maybe 2 years instead of 3 or 4.
Which could unlock a lot of investment.
Potentially huge amounts. We're already hearing about major commercial deals. X-Energy and Centrica planning up to 12 advanced modular reactors in Hartlepool. That could power 1.5 million homes, create thousands of jobs.
And reactors powering data centers.
That too. Holtec, EDF, Tritax looking at that in Nottinghamshire. And investment firms like BlackRock planning to pour hundreds of millions, maybe billions, into British data centers and AI infrastructure.
And the idea is cheap nuclear power will fuel the AI revolution.
That seems to be the link being made. Reliable, cheap power as the foundation for all this AI growth. It's about energy security underpinning tech leadership.
So bringing this all together, the trade deals, the tech alliance, the nuclear pushes, what does it mean for this special relationship itself, the day-to-day diplomacy?
Well, President Trump's re-election means the UK faces more pressure to align with America first. Across the board, trade, security, alliances.
How might that alignment happen?
One suggestion is a formal transatlantic security council focusing on things like cyber threats, operations in the Indo-Pacific, intelligence sharing, just making sure cooperation is seamless. The message is, the EPD isn't just trade, it's part of a wider strategy, especially countering China.
We've certainly seen some diplomatic smoothing over, haven't we? Foreign Secretary Lamy's comments about Trump come to mind.
Yes, that shift from calling him a neo-Nazi sympathizing sociopath to funny, friendly, and warm was noticeable. It shows the pragmatism required now.
And Prime Minister Starmer pushing ahead with the state visit invitation, despite some opposition.
Right, showing respect for the institution of the monarchy and its diplomatic role, but past actions still cast a shadow.
Like the Labor staff campaigning for Kamala Harris in 2024.
Exactly. Sources close to Trump apparently saw that as direct election interference. And history suggests those kinds of things can damage relations for a long time.
So how can the UK build goodwill now?
Well, aligning on certain foreign policy issues is suggested, like Iran snapping back sanctions under the nuclear deal, maybe designating the IRGC as terrorists. It shows how specific policy choices can play into the broader relationship.
And this is all happening as the global order itself seems to be shifting, especially U.S. foreign policy.
Definitely. The U.S. seems to be moving away from interventionism, focusing much more on great power competition, realpolitik, countering China in the Pacific, focusing on its own hemisphere.
Secretary of State Rubio talked about moving away from ideological mistakes.
He did, and Secretary of Defense Hegseth made waves saying things like Ukraine getting back its pre-2014 borders or joining NATO were unrealistic outcomes now. It signals a shift towards negotiation, political solutions.
Which puts more pressure on allies to step up.
Absolutely. Look at NATO members agreeing in June to aim for 5% of GDP on defense by 2035. That's a huge increase driven by U.S. pressure.
So the advice for the UK is
Beef up its own forces. Prepare to potentially fill gaps if U.S. troop presence in Europe reduces. And on Ukraine, the focus shifts to reconstruction using private investment for infrastructure, employing Ukrainians locally.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. This deep dive shows the U.S.-UK relationship is really being reshaped, driven by America first, driven by this tech race with China.
We've seen big economic changes, those tariffs, the EPD with its mixed results, and these huge new ambitions in technology and nuclear power.
And all alongside this delicate diplomatic dance, trying to keep shared interests aligned.
And remember, this isn't just about the U.S. and UK, it's a potential blueprint for how alliances might work in the future. It affects global economics, technology, things that touch industries, jobs, your daily life.
So as this special relationship finds its new footing, here's something to think about. In a world where economic decisions are also national security decisions, where diplomacy can turn quickly, How do your choices, maybe as a consumer, maybe as a citizen, how do they connect to this bigger global picture of power and influence?